Welcome to Let's Talk Death, conversations to inform and inspire. Let's Talk Death is a series of conversations with some amazing people from various fields. Our goal through these conversations is to normalize, educate, and demystify the taboo around death, dying, and the journey of grief. Hello, welcome to this episode of Let's Talk Death. I'm Fran Solomon.
And I'm Andy McNeil.
And we're thrilled to be your host for these conversations. Let's Talk Death is brought to you by Heal Grief, a social support network creating community after someone has died. Everything we do is inspired by our core belief that no one should ever grieve alone.
Our goal with this program is to have a friendly chat with some amazing people so we can help normalize and educate our Heal Grief community. Our guest today is Matthew Kennedy. Matthew is a self-taught ceramic artist whose professional career has spanned more than 25 years. Matthew set himself apart from others as one of the first who began using a tattoo machine as a carving tool on ceramics. Today, his artwork is featured in many offline and online galleries. Matthew says he has a mission to serve people with his creative ability. He helps memorialize loved ones by giving them a special, unique resting place with one of his one-of-a-kind urns. Matthew, we are delighted to have you as a guest on our show.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here. I appreciate it so much. I really do.
Matthew, before we speak about your work, I'd like to go back in time and ask you to share a bit about your experience grieving your mother's death.
Okay. Yeah, that was fairly recent. That was actually May 21st of this year. She's passed away. Yeah, it was quite the journey, I'll tell you. It was quite the journey. You want the story or?
Yeah, please. Our audience really gets connected with our guests.
Okay. Well, let's see. I can tell you, my mother and my family, I grew up in a wonderful family, and my mother was wonderful when I was a young child. She got diagnosed with lymphoma cancer about 27 years ago, and she had about a 50% chance of living or dying. And we went to Scripps Institute in La Jolla, and she got a bone marrow transplant. And during the procedure, they obviously, it was a very heavy procedure, and they put her on a lot of opioids, opium, and all kinds of stuff, because it was a very serious surgery. I actually stayed there with her the whole time, and it was pretty horrific. She actually aged about 10 years overnight. She got wrinkles overnight. That's how severe the chemotherapy was.
Wow.
So, she was in there for about 2-3 weeks, and she got hooked on opioids, and that battle lasted for 25 years. I got sober 27 years ago. So it's very interesting. I was using, when I was a teenager from 13 to 24 years old. I'm 51 now. And then when I got sober, when I was 24, she had got, hooked on these opioids. And so she was hooked on them ever since. So it's interesting because my mother and myself's relationship, we've never been really sober together, which is interesting. So I don't know. She got hooked on opioids, and then about 12, 13 years ago, I stayed with her for about 9 months. It was the worst 9 months of my life. She got hooked on fentanyl. So she is one of the fentanyl victims, and I should say the victims of pain management, which, in my opinion, I mean, they do a lot of good for a lot of people, but in her case, they were just legalized drug dealers. And they gave her these fentanyl suckers, and the suckers were, what they give cancer patients when they pass away. And so she put these fentanyl suckers in her mouth, and she would pass out, literally breathing only 1 to 2 times a minute. So I literally saw her only breathing 1 or 2 times a minute, and she gave herself dementia by taking these suckers, these fentanyl suckers. So, and she also, the bathroom was kind of her drug den, so she lived in the bathroom, and she passed out, literally, and burned her legs with her cigarettes, got both of her legs cut off. She had to have a colostomy bag. She gave herself dementia. It was a nightmare. It was a complete nightmare for, the whole 25 years, 27 years that she was, hooked on drugs. But yeah, it was a total complete nightmare.
Well, there's, first of all, thank you for sharing your story. I know our listeners identify with our guests because really our listeners, that's what they're dealing with. They're dealing with the death of someone. But even more so than that, quite often our listeners there's a story that leads up to, it's not just a person's death. There's a life that the person lived, right? And there's great things about the life, but there can also be these challenging things about their life. And it's, there's more ways we lose someone other than death is kind of the idea, right?
Exactly.
And it's
Yeah,
sort
you're
of
right.
like the person I knew was no longer that person. And then I
Correct.
had this that I contended with. And there's a whole story here. And how often we focus so much on when and how the person died when there's all these other things that were part of what that meant to me, good, bad, all of it, that is part of it.
That's right.
Along the way.
That's right. And in this case, because I had gone through so much, and I feel that, I worried about her every day for over 25 years. I worried about her every single day. And so with her death, it was actually a big, huge relief for me, because I don't have to, selfishly, I guess, I don't have to worry about her anymore. I know she's in a better place, and I'm free. I'm finally free, and that's how I felt about the situation. So
I
When
really appreciate you saying that, because often in our support groups, we have so many members that feel guilty because they feel unburdened. They're still grieving, but they feel unburdened and guilty because of it.
I don't feel guilty because I went through so much heck with her. I just went through so much with her that and we still talked here and there. It wasn't like I cut the ties completely. I almost did. I had to create distance for myself because it was such a toxic relationship. But I would talk to her here and there, and she knew I loved her, and I knew she loved me. So that wasn't an issue, thank God. But I was just glad I'm just glad today that it's just over. And I can
I
move
do a
on.
lot of. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad that it's over and that I can move on at 51 years old. I feel that she has taken, well, she gave me so much. I love my mother dearly, but I feel that she's taken so much from me over the last 25 years because of me having to worry about her every day, that I feel free and I feel good. So.
I will say this conversation will be helpful to a number of people watching the conversation. I was going to say, I do a lot of training of counselors and therapists in the area of grief. And one of the slides I pop up is I say, well, let me tell you one other type of reaction people have in grief, and that is relief. And the look on people's face when they go, relief? Like, what do you mean people have relief? I'm like, well, let me tell you, people can have relief, and here's why, and here's the situations that can lead up to that. Because what we try to encourage people here at Heal Grief, just about grief, is let's not lay any assumptions on anyone about what you think their experience was or is with their person and what that looks like for them, to the point where allow them to tell you what it was like. And then you'll learn so much more in the process rather than walking in with assumptions. So thank you for sharing that. But I'm curious now just to learn a little bit more about this practice with ceramics and what you have been able to create and to do. It sounds incredible, and just want to learn a little bit more about, number one, how you even discovered this and what that looks like, and how you are utilizing that to create these unique, one-of-a-kind urns.
Okay. Well, I guess it started off when I got sober. Everything started off when I got sober, right? 27 years ago, I got sober, and at the time I was playing pool for a living in a pool hall, which was fun. You know, it was fun. And I had done that for about 2 or 3 years and was the town pool shark. And then, you know, after I got sober about a year, my sponsor told me, hey, you better pick a different hobby. You know, you're hanging out in bars too much. So I said, okay. So he went through this advertisement. He said, go to Michael's and get this toy potter's wheel. I said, okay. So I went to Michael's, got a $25 toy battery powered, you know, little plastic potter's wheel, and played with it. And then I asked for my mom for, you know, for Christmas for a potter's wheel, and she gave me, my mom and dad gave me this beautiful potter's wheel, $1,500 potter's wheel, and I've just been on it ever since. I just absolutely love it, and it's been a wonderful journey of just you know, self reflection really, and just and learning, and a lot of learning.
What
Yeah.
inspired you to create urns?
Well, I had put a piece in a coffee shop about, I don't know, 5 or 8 years after I started pottery. I was proficient enough to build a vessel with a lid. So I put that vessel with a lid. It wasn't an urn. It was just a vessel with a really nice exotic wood lid on it. And I put it in a coffee shop for sale, and somebody bought it as an urn. So I
Wow.
thought, oh, well, I'm in the urn business. Let's do this, you know. So I created about 6 of them, and I took them to a funeral parlor in Indio, California, and he bought all 6. He bought all 6 urns from me, and I thought, well, this is great. So
Wow.
you know, I it was on from there. But you know, it's interesting because it's been a challenge really ever since then to actually break into the market for some reason. I don't know why, but I mean, I'm actually doing fairly well right now, and I'm excited about the business right now, and everything's fine. But yeah, it's been quite the journey. I've been trying to make and create urns for people, and I have created urns for people over the last probably 15 years.
Wow.
How I got
I mean,
started in the Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, please. Go ahead.
How I got started tattooing on them is about, I don't know, 12 or 15 years ago. I was watching a show on TLC called Miami Ink. And I don't know if you guys remember that, but it was a
Yeah.
tattoo show, you know, on TV. And I thought, hey, you know, that's neat. So I went to a tattoo convention in Pasadena or Pomona. And I was walking down the aisles, and I saw this guy with tattoo kits, and I thought, oh, let me buy one. You know, I was making some good money at the time. And I thought, let me just buy a kit and take it home and see what I can do as far as carving. You know, potters and ceramic artists are always looking for tools they can carve with. So I bought this $100 kit, brought it home, and I said, oh my God, this is great. It's like a little mini, it's like a little mini jackhammer. And
Yeah.
it creates a little relief carving about, I don't know, 1/8 inch thick, and it leaves a little hairy texture on the ceramics, and it's just a wonderful little carving tool. So
Wow.
that's how it got started. And prior to that, I was a bench jeweler. I was trying to become a bench jeweler. I went to jewelry school in Carlsbad, California, GIA Institute, and my hands were too big. I'm 6'8", and my hands are way too big. I went to this school, and like 95% of them were Asian, you know, were Asian of descent, because they had those
Right.
tiny little hands.
Right.
And so, you know, I was this big guy with these big hands that couldn't do it. So I try to use my jewelry skills, what I learned anyway, in my ceramics.
Yeah. It's
So,
fascinating. Yeah.
so you say each one is unique. What is the inspiration that you get to create a very unique urn for someone to care for their loved one's remains, the ashes?
Well, what I like to do is ask for their loved one's picture and a little bio about that person, so that I can think about that person as I'm creating the urn. I mean, it's not like a little, you know, big channeling thing, but I do try to, you know, have reverence and pray about it, and you know, try to be the best I can, and try to create the best vessel I can for that person that I'm thinking about. So that is my main inspiration when I'm creating each urn, is I'm thinking about that person in their life, and I'm making this urn for them. And so
Wow.
that gives it a lot of meaning. And I love the fact that number one thing that I love about creating urns for people is that you know, just like a musician, I guess, or any other artist, if you produce something really special and good for somebody, it makes them cry. And I've had so many people that I've made urns for cry and tell me how wonderful it made them feel, that's why I'm still doing it, even though it's been such a challenge, you know, professionally and business wise. But I absolutely love the feeling that I get and the connection that it brings to my art. So that's why
Well,
I do it.
you're, well, you're, I have to say, you're a caregiver for those people. I mean, that is what it comes down to. I mean, the reality, I've worked with bereaved people for 3 decades now, and I can tell you, because I've sat in the counseling room with them, they will remember everything about the way people interacted with them, treated them, what they did for them, didn't do for them around their person and their person's death. And you're talking about people who are at a very vulnerable moment in their lives, and you are giving them a gift of it being personal, because it is personal to them. It's their person, so what a gift that you're giving them. Really,
Yeah, and I
tremendous.
experienced that too. That I experienced that recently in May when my mom passed away, that the hospice workers were just wonderful, just absolutely wonderful. And I felt so connected and, in my time of need to those people and what they do for people. I mean, I just think it's phenomenal. I think hospice workers are just great people. So,
Yeah. The same thing. It really is. There's a continuum of care that happens in people's lives, and it goes from certainly a hospice worker, a person in the hospital, the person who's there with the family immediately after a death, funeral directors, a funeral home, all of those individuals, a person who's personalizing, making an urn, all of that is part of a person's care. And it's just tremendous to hear. Well, we're almost out of time.
Before we
ahead.
go out of time, I want to
go,
do a little plug, because Matthew, you also do military urns. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, my wife and I, Janine, she helped inspire the website, and we both came up with the idea of, hey, we make urns, we might as well, do some military urns. And so while I was up in Oregon, we made a website, and I created a host of military urns. So I made a website, specifically dedicated to that.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fun. I
That's
liked it.
fantastic.
I like all kinds of designs, and whatever I can find or think up or be given. I love to carve and tattoo any kind of design I can. So,
well, that's fantastic. I do some work with an organization called TAPS. It's for military bereaved, and I know that it means a lot to those families, because it's recognizing not only a person's life but their service, and that is at the heart of a lot of the meaning that a person has, and the remembering of their person becomes a big part of that. So
that's right. And I've always respected the military greatly. My grandfather, he was a airplane mechanic and served in both wars, and he I always was in awe of him. So that was kind of neat too.
it's interesting. My grandfather was served, and he was a airplane mechanic as well. So
Really?
that was an interesting little. When you said that, I was like, "Yeah, it sounds like my grandfather."
Okay, well,
I know it wasn't the same.
Well, my father was a lieutenant colonel in World War II and a paratrooper jumping out of planes in combat.
Okay. Well, there you go. Well, our grandfathers worked on the plane that he jumped out of, so that's how it works there. So anyway, well, this has been a great conversation, Matthew. We are about out of time, but before we leave, I did want to give an opportunity. Our guests often want to know how they can connect with our listeners want to know how they can connect with our guests and your work, and how might they go about doing that?
They can just type in my web address, which is www.ceramictattooart.com. Or just Google ceramic tattoo art and you'll find me. I'm pretty much the only one that's I know I'm the first one to tattoo on ceramic, so I'm all over online. You can find me.
Okay, awesome.
Matthew, we want to thank you for being a guest here on Let's Talk Death and for sharing the inspiration behind your work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been wonderful. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on. I really do.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to those joining us for this episode of Let's Talk Death. If you would like to learn more about Heal Grief, please visit us at healgrief.org. At healgrief.org, you can learn more about all of the programs and resources of Heal Grief, including our national network of support for grieving young adults. It's a program we call Actively Moving Forward.
And if you know of a bereaved adult, refer them to the AMF app, where adults of all ages connect with others experiencing a similar death loss. And last, make sure to sign up on healgrief.org to receive our newsletter for links to future episodes of Let's Talk Death.
And so with that, again, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time on Let's Talk Death.